The first snow of December covered the ancient city of Ashbourne in silence, turning its grand estates into glittering white kingdoms. At the highest hill stood Blackwood Manor, home of billionaire heir Alexander Blackwood, a man the world called cold, ruthless, and impossible to love. Business magazines admired him. His enemies feared him. His servants obeyed him. But no one truly knew why he had locked his heart away. 5 years earlier, Alexander had watched his parents die in what the police declared a tragic accident. Everyone believed the case was closed, but Alexander knew better. Hidden behind the polished smiles of the royal elite was a conspiracy that had stolen his family, his inheritance, and nearly his life. Since that night, he trusted no one. He believed love was weakness, kindness was manipulation, and happiness was only temporary. Unknown to everyone, Alexander had spent years secretly building evidence against the powerful families responsible for his parents' deaths. His revenge was carefully planned. Every business deal, every investment, every alliance moved him one step closer to destroying those who had betrayed the Blackwood bloodline. Everything was under control, until she arrived. Emily Carter was nothing like the women who usually surrounded billionaires. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't famous. She wasn't even looking for love. She had inherited her grandmother's tiny bookstore after losing both parents at a young age. When rising rents forced her to close the shop, she accepted a temporary job cataloging rare books inside Blackwood Manor. Because the manor had no nearby accommodation, Alexander's lawyer arranged for her to stay in one of the guest wings. Alexander hated the idea. "I don't share my home." His lawyer smiled. "You share nothing. She'll simply live here for a few weeks." Alexander reluctantly agreed. The first morning they met, Emily walked into the enormous dining hall carrying a cup of coffee. Andy accidentally spilled it across Alexander's expensive documents. The room froze. Every servant expected her to be fired immediately. Instead of apologizing in fear, Emily looked directly into his eyes. "You should smile more." Alexander stared at her. "What?" "You look like someone sentenced to life in prison." No one had ever spoken to him like that. He simply stood, gathered his papers, and walked away. But for the first time in years, someone had made him speechless. Living together became a daily battlefield. Alexander liked silence. Emily sang while cooking. Alexander liked expensive wine. Emily preferred hot chocolate. Alexander worked until dawn. Emily filled the library with Christmas music. She placed fresh flowers in dark rooms. She baked cookies for the staff. She convinced the gardeners to plant colorful roses where Alexander wanted plain stone statues. Everywhere she went, life followed. Alexander found it unbelievably annoying. Yet strangely, the manor no longer felt empty. Late one evening, Emily found Alexander sitting alone in the library. Rain hammered the windows. He was staring at an old family photograph. She quietly sat beside him. "You miss them?" He didn't answer. "You don't have to pretend you're made of stone." He finally spoke. "Everyone I loved died." Emily gently replied. "That doesn't mean everyone you will love is destined to leave." Those words stayed with him long after she walked away. Weeks passed. Alexander began noticing little things. She secretly repaired old books instead of replacing them. She remembered every servant's birthday. She fed stray dogs outside the gates. She laughed with children who visited the estate. She treated billionaires and gardeners exactly the same. She never wanted anything from him. Not money, not power, not fame. Only honesty. For the first time in years, Alexander wanted to become a better man. Christmas approached. Emily decorated the entire manor. Alexander complained about every decoration. Yet every evening he secretly walked through the glowing halls after everyone slept. The warm lights reminded him of childhood, of family, of happiness, things he thought had disappeared forever. But happiness never lasts long when revenge is unfinished. One night Alexander discovered something shocking. Emily's father had once worked for the same powerful family responsible for his parents' deaths. His anger exploded. He believed Emily had entered his life as part of their plan. He confronted her without giving her a chance to explain. "You lied to me." Emily looked confused. "I never lied. Your father worked for Victor Harrington. My father was his driver. You knew everything. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't even know those people existed until you mentioned them. Alexander refused to believe her. He ordered security to remove her from the estate immediately. Without another word, she left. Aina returned to silence. No singing. No flowers. No laughter. No smell of fresh cookies. Only emptiness. Alexander thought he had protected himself. Instead, he had destroyed the only happiness he had found. Days later, Alexander's private investigator uncovered the truth. Emily's father had secretly tried to expose the conspiracy years earlier. He had been murdered before he could testify. Emily wasn't his enemy. She had been another victim all along. Alexander realized his greatest mistake. His revenge had blinded him. Determined to fix everything, Alexander searched everywhere. He found Emily back inside her tiny abandoned bookstore, packing the last remaining books into boxes. She looked exhausted. He quietly entered. I'm sorry. She continued packing. I was wrong. Still no response. I spent years hunting monsters. She finally looked at him. And I became one. Silence filled the room. Then Alexander handed her a folder. Inside was every piece of evidence exposing the conspiracy that had destroyed both their families. We finished this together. For months they secretly worked side by side. Emily used her intelligence to uncover forgotten records. Alexander used his resources to expose corrupt politicians, judges, and billionaires connected to the murders. One by one, empires collapsed. Companies fell. Hidden fortunes were seized. The people who believed they ruled the city were finally brought before justice. Alexander achieved the revenge he had dreamed about for years. But something had changed. This time, victory didn't come from destroying enemies. It came from protecting the person he loved. 1 year later, Blackwood Manor looked completely different. Children played in the gardens. The old library became a public learning center. Emily reopened her bookstore with Alexander's support, refusing to let him buy it for her. I want to earn my dreams. He smiled. I know. The cold billionaire who once believed love was weakness now found strength in it. On the first snowy evening of winter, Alexander led Emily back to the place where they had first argued over spilled coffee. He knelt on one knee. I spent years planning revenge. She smiled through tears. And now I only want to spend the rest of my life planning a future with you. Emily whispered. Yes. As snow gently covered Blackwood Manor once again, Alexander finally understood that revenge could win battles. But love was what truly healed broken souls. The man who once trusted no one had found the one person who melted the ice around his heart. And together they proved that even the coldest billionaire could become warm again when the right person walked into his life, not to change his fortune, but to change his destiny forever.